You're listening to The White Rabbit, conversations on the art of presenting in a rather noisy world. Your hosts are Matt Krause and Alper Rozanes. Matt helps leaders of international companies speak, write, and present with confidence. Alper is an author, communications trainer, and a startup investor with a diverse portfolio of companies in Barcelona. If you like this podcast, please share with your friends and colleagues. Now, on to Matt and Alper for today's conversation.
Alper, last week we were talking about the hero's journey for normal people. And it was mostly me describing an alternative way to approach the hero's journey. And you mentioned it as we were getting ready for the podcast. You mentioned that the hero's journey is a pet peeve of yours too. And that got me to wondering, tell me more. What is it about the hero's journey that makes it a pet peeve for you?
Well, the thing with the hero's journey is, I think it became famous, it became circulated a lot, and we started saying, I started hearing things like, we want to incorporate that into our presentation. We must do it, we should do it, and things like that. And anytime I hear, for example, something about must do or should do or without any other alternatives, it immediately gets its permanent spot on my pet peeves. So the thing with the hero's journey was, like you mentioned in the last episode, yes, it's a good point. It's a good point in taking people on a journey from point A to point B and applying it to the presentation itself. But it's not the easiest thing to do. And sometimes during the intention of incorporating something not so easy into the flow of the presentation can really mess things up. So rather than feeling obligated to do that, I think your recommendations were very well to the point in maybe trying to find your own way, trying to use that as an inspiration, but craft it basically to your needs. And if there are other alternatives, you can use them as well.
Okay.
So that was the thing. Like it created this obligatory response from many people thinking that, I have to do this. I must use this. I don't know how to do that, but I must do it. So that's why it got its place, rightfully earned place on my list of presentation pet peeves.
So how about other pet peeves? Do you have any other pet peeves, or is that the only one?
It's a growing list. Right now I have maybe 6 or 7 of them. I actually did some video recordings in the studio a couple of weeks ago about them, and I'm going to publish them too. Oh yes, it's a growing list.
It's a growing list. Well,
give me a number between 1 and 6, and I'll tell you.
Okay, well let's start with for today. Let's start with 4, and of course that number might go down from there if you get in a ranting mode. But we'll shoot for 4. Okay, so we did hero's journey. Tell me about another pet peeve. What's a pet peeve of yours?
Well, one of the strongest ones is, I don't know, I'm sure we talked about this in the podcast before, but it was about certain limitations put on the presentation. Like, it should be 10 slides. It shouldn't be, or there should be, like this one I saw a couple of days ago, there should be 6 slides, 6 sentences on each slide of 6 words or less.
Okay.
Like, when I hear something like that, one of the first thoughts that come to my mind is, was there a general assembly of 8 point whatever billion people in the world in a UN meeting somewhere who the authority said, okay, we're going to limit all presentations to 6 slides, 6 sentences. Who on earth came up with that, and based on what? That's the reason it immediately takes its almost permanent spot in my presentation pet peeves. Because
so I've got a question for you about this pet peeve.
Go ahead.
So how about like Guy Kawasaki, for example, one of the most famous public speaker presentation people around. So Guy Kawasaki, he's got this rule. I think his rule is for entrepreneur pitch decks or something like that. It's like 10, 20, 30 or something like that. 10 slides, I don't know, 20 words per slide or something like that. minimum font point
Mm-hmm.
30. So is even, are you saying that even something from somebody so famous as Guy Kawasaki is still pissing you off?
Well, I wouldn't say piss me off. I mean, I highly respect the information, but at the same time, there is the 666, there is the 10, 20, 30, there is the 1, 2, 3, etc. The reason why the thing goes on my list of pet peeves is not because it's invalid or valid or right or wrong. The reason is it puts you into this mode of limitation where you forget the main goal, which is communicating well, connecting well with the audience. Okay, so then what? I have a pitch deck of 11 slides. No, that's going to automatically mean that you're not going to receive funding because you broke the rule of 10 slides or the 6. So at the end of the day, I think it puts us further away from the main goal of any presentation, any speech, any pitch, which is connecting with your audience. Now, of course, the main after connecting with your audience, the main point also should be not running over time. So you cannot say, well, I'm not bound by limits. So you gave me 5 minutes, but I'm going to speak for 25 minutes. No, we will shoot you down the stage if you do that. So you cannot do that. But if you're staying within the time limit given to you, who cares if you use 5 slides or 15 slides, as long as you're creating a clear communication channel, you're not hitting me with a machine gun of slides, etc. So that's why it got that limitation got on my list of pet peeves.
Okay, so if we've got 2 pet peeves so far, one being the hero's journey, number 2 being the arbitrary rules. Tell me about number 3. What's number 3 on Alper's list of pet peeves?
That would be, we need to stick to the corporate template.
Good one.
And as a presentation, I mean, I for more than 10 years that I've been doing this, I don't know the number of times I heard that. Again, immediately I was sometimes asking and sometimes keeping my mouth shut about who on earth came up with this corporate template, on what basis, and with which authority. Because after all, a corporate template is a work of art. It's not like you're building a bridge and there is physics involved that you shouldn't violate. There is tension, there is force, etc., etc. No, a corporate template is the end result of someone or a group of people's work and thinking that this is the best way to represent our corporation. It's not carved in stone. It's not bound by universal laws. And most of the time, they are wrong. Most of the time, you see a fixed company logo in one point. You see a fixed place for a title. You see unnecessary items such as a slide count, the date, the name of the speaker on each slide. And sometimes you get like falling blue lines mixing with gray things on the side, etc., etc. What I'm saying is, when you stick to a corporate template which has many unnecessary elements on the slide, you're actually shooting yourself in the foot, because you're putting things onto the slide which are going to be competing for attention with the main points that you should be talking about. So I think in that case, one of the best questions to ask would be, how bound am I to use a corporate slide? Well, sometimes you cannot get out of it. I can certainly understand that. But I think your responsibility as a presenter, as a speaker, should be, what is the best way to connect with my audience? Is my template helping that? Is it hindering that? If it is hindering that, what can I do about that? How? Push back. I mean, if you feel you're forced to use a corporate template, well, push back. As long as you create a good you create a good impression on the audience, I don't think they would say, this was a great presentation, but we're going to fire you because you didn't use the template. If, I mean, is it possible that it could happen? Of course it could happen, but then I will be questioning whether you're working in the right place or not.
Yeah. So before we move on to the next pet peeve, I've got a question on this one. So if I'm an employee in, I don't know, big corporation ABC, and I don't like the template, is there a typical? I want to get authorization from somebody to do something else, or I want to find the person who made this template. is there a typical department that I could go to? All I know is that I started work at big corporation ABC. I started work at this company 5 years ago, and they gave me this template and said, use it. And I've been doing that for 5 years. And now all of a sudden I decide, no, I want to start pushing back. Is there organizationally, is there like a typical place where I could go to start pushing back on, hey, maybe we should tweak this present, or at least loosen up the rules?
Well, I don't have specific information about that, but I assume it would be the department that deals with corporate branding, marketing, or something, a department that deals with the corporate identity. And I think the biggest thing to remember at that point is things may look great on paper. Things may look great on the slide. For example, you can create this template which looks beautiful. There is this logo carefully put there. There are these lines which creates an impression of we are moving forward, etc., etc. But when the time comes to make a corporate presentation, we're not presenting an artwork. We're not running for some design awards. We're making the presentation maybe to make a sale, maybe to inform our customers, maybe to generate business, etc., etc. So it's important to remember that everything on the slide should have a purpose. And if you as a presenter believe that they don't, then I think it's your responsibility to push back and find the necessary people to do that.
Okay. So we've got time for one more pet peeve. And so number 1 was hero's journey. Number 2 was arbitrary rules, and number 3 is the godlike corporate template and don't touch it. So Alper's pet peeve number 4, what would you like to put on there?
I think that would be stories. I think stories became also very famous during the same time, or during similar times with the hero's journey, and they are interlinked. By the way, hero's journey is a story after all, and so many times I heard this expression: "We must include a story in the presentation." Okay, story about what? We don't know that yet, but we must include a story in the presentation. So at that moment, I was finding myself asking, yeah, but what do you want the story to be about?
Yeah.
Because in that case, the thinking was someone somewhere read that stories are good and they should include them in the presentation. They don't know how to do that, but they should include it in the presentation. So it was like, we have to include a story in the presentation. Okay, which one?
Okay.
Your story, and it's any other story. So in that regard, I can also understand how, this is what I was talking in the video. It can be captivating to start a speech by saying, it was the morning of November 17, 2016. I was walking on the street, penniless. Okay, I get that it might be captivating. For me, it would be captivating. And I would even try to imagine, what day was it? November 17, 19, 2016. Would it be a Thursday? Would it be a month? For me, it would resonate. But before recording that video, I asked to 5 people. It's not a huge crowd, but more than half of them, 3 people said, I'm not interested. Just give me whatever it is that you're talking about. Yes, I believe stories are good tools to use to connect with the audience, to open a communication channel, but it's not like a cookie cutter solution for every presentation. Again, with the previous pet peeve, like putting things on the slide. Okay, it's a good idea to incorporate a story into your presentation, but it should serve a very good purpose. And if you cannot answer that question, well, it would be nice to include a story. We don't know how well it would work. Just don't put it. Save it for something else.
Yeah.
So that would be my pet peeve about using stories.
Okay. So it's about time to wrap up. But by the way, one thing that I noticed about this pattern of Alper's top 4 pet peeves is that one thing that they all seem to have in common is not being happy with people who are following arbitrary rules, or following rules and not thinking about why those rules exist. This is a common thread that's running through all of these pet peeves. So everybody who's listening to this podcast, keep in mind that we have an iconoclast here in the studio. Alper is breaking down and smashing the icons that are up on pedestals in the studio. So if you've got an icon, somewhere up on a pedestal. Watch out, because Alper is coming for it.
I like that.
So thank you very much, Alper, and I'll talk to you next week.
Thank you. All right, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to The White Rabbit with Matt Krause and Alper Rozanes. You can subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, iTunes, or through your favorite feed.